Hi everyone, my name is Jerry Opoka and I welcome you back to my channel. Today's topic is about trauma and how we process trauma. I've been thinking about this for a while and I just could not articulate it in a way that I thought would be understood by people, but I think I have it. Now, we are a whole human being, but the whole human being has fragments, has hands, has fingers, has fingernails, has legs, has a head, a neck, and all these other parts of us that make the whole, that come together and make a whole. In the same way, in our minds, and I'm trying to explain this in the most literal way that people can understand. In the same way, in our minds, there's the whole of us, and then there's fragments of us. Now, when we have a traumatic experience, that traumatic experience happens to and is perceived a certain way by a certain fragment of our entire being. It's never the whole of me that is affected by a particular experience. Now, the challenge is that when that traumatic experience resurfaces, the whole of me will own the experience. And we just feel like we are trapped, we feel like we're lost, we feel like we cannot continue because of this experience that, seems to be taking over our lives. And I've been thinking a lot about how to help people who are going through that understand that it is just a fragment. It's just a small part of you that has now taken over. So I hope that in this video, I will be able to help somebody appreciate what I'm trying to get across so that it can actually help them through a situation. Now, every time, let's say something happens to you have a traumatic experience in your life, or an event that causes you strife, emotional and so on and so forth. That event, we often successfully store it away. It's like our mind takes that experience at the time and stores it somewhere. Now, it peaks, and we have to be, I want you guys to understand that the mind operating on its own picks a time in our lives when it feels that we are now capable of dealing with this traumatic experience or with this event that has been stored. And it brings that experience to the forefront. We do not go and pick these experiences. We do not sit down while we're having tea and say, oh, today let me go back and, just out of the blue, I was laughing and just chilling, enjoying a movie, and I say, let me stop this movie midway, and I go back to a traumatic experience. Every time that situation comes back, to the forefront of your mind, it's your mind that is bringing it up to say, we are now ready to deal with this particular issue. Now, every time normally when it comes up, we depending on the gravity of it, we can get overwhelmed. And when what we do is we go back and relive that experience. So let's assume I went out with a group of friends and I felt like I was unsafe because I had money on me in my bag, and I felt like that money was unsafe with me that day because of the kind of company I was keeping. But because I wanted to continue having fun, I kept the money and I didn't do anything to specifically secure that money. And at some point, I even allowed my bag to sit because I thought from where I was, I could watch it. And later in the night, I find money is missing. That, and it's just an example, but that experience, maybe the money was for something else, and that experience could affect me negatively, like seriously. So my mind may store that memory somewhere, and eventually it will bring it back for me to process what happened. Now, when that thought comes up, it comes up at a time where it knows I am ready to deal with it. So a lot of the times when those thoughts come up, we go back and relive the whole experience, even the parts where we thought, where we were dumb, even the parts where we were careless, even the parts where we were unreasonable, and all these negative emotions. We actually relive it. And because you're reliving it, as far as your body is concerned, it is actually happening again. So there will be chemicals that are released inside your body. There'll be emotions that come up that make you really feel like you're back in that place. And it will obviously be a bad experience again. Now, what we ordinarily do is we run away from that experience, and we run in so many ways. Either we actually get up from where we are to shift the energy, go and do something else, or we pick up the phone and call somebody, or we go out and try and get our minds busy with something else so that we shut out the negative experience that we were going through again, so that we don't have to deal with that bad experience and how we're putting ourselves down or beating ourselves over what happened. Unfortunately, this memory is inside of us. And every time it thinks now is a good time for us to deal with this, it will come up again. So it becomes like us running away from our own tail. Every time you have stopped running, like when you're running, you're not looking behind. When you have stopped running and you're now seated, or maybe you're even now chilling, you try to sit down, you will sit on your tail and you'll be like, oh my God, the tail is still there. The tail. So it's like running away from your own shadow. Every time you're not paying attention to everything around you, you will notice that your shadow is still there. So what do we do in such a situation? Like I said at the beginning of this video, is that the trauma is stored in a fragment of who we are. And that fragment is coming up because it needs us to deal with this issue. It needs us to heal this issue or heal this particular part of us. So when we are thinking about that situation, it's like we're having a conversation in our heads. Oh, this is what I did. I should have done that. Maybe I shouldn't have done this. Yes, but then this was my reason. And, I really thought it was safe, and so on and so forth. We are actually having a back and forth conversation with ourselves. And many times we think, I am talking to, like, the whole of me is talking to the whole of me. And then it's like I'm mirroring to myself. That sometimes can be counteractive because I am telling myself, and I don't know how else to explain it. If I was talking to somebody else, to another human being who was saying, this is what I did and so on, I will listen and then I'll give a bit of advice, maybe I'll ask a few questions and they will answer, so that we get to really understand what happened. In the same way, we have to speak to this small fragment of us, understanding that it is not the whole of us that is holding this trauma. It's not the whole of us that has reappeared to talk about the event, so that we can deal with what it means and the implications and so on and so forth. So when we are speaking, we have to remember that the whole of me is okay right now where I am. But when this situation, when this fragment of me comes up and wants to talk, I should listen to this fragment. And this will be, you can imagine, it's like a young you or a smaller you, so that when you ask a question, you listen, and that other you will tell you the answer. And you keep going back and forth, and you say, okay, why do you feel, when you think about that event, why does it make you angry? And you will that fragment of you will say, it makes me angry because I allowed myself to be robbed. I allowed myself to be abused. I allowed myself to be used. Why do you feel like you allowed yourself? Because on the day I felt, I thought, I got a sense, I got a feeling that I did not act on. And why didn't you act on it? Well, I didn't act on it because I felt like, why would these people want to do something like this to me? So I, kind of justified it, and then what happened? And so on and so forth. Now, what you're doing is you are listening to that fragment of you. It's easier for us to want to listen to another human being because, it's a good thing to let them speak and we listen so that we can give them advice. Or sometimes you don't even have advice, but when you listen, you just say, you know what, it's okay. It happened in the past. You don't have to relive it again. What lessons have you learned from it? Let's just try to live the lessons that we have learned. So it's easy to tell a friend. It's so difficult to have that conversation with ourselves. First of all, because we think we are speaking to the whole of us, like the whole of us is broken, the whole of us is fake, the whole of us was irresponsible. No, it's never the whole of us. It's just that small. And all the things that we go through, even when you're sick, when you're physically sick, you will have a stomach flu. If you have a stomach flu, your head is still fine, your hands are still fine, and you can reach out for your medicine, you can reach out for food, you can smile still. So it's not the whole of you that is broken. If you've stubbed your toe, your leg will hurt, you will limp, but your other leg is fine, your hands are fine. In the same way, exactly what we have on the outside is what is mirrored on the inside. So as you have this conversation, you keep asking, why do you feel like this? Why do you think this is what happened? Why did it happen? And so on and so forth until you get to the bottom of it. As you speak, you are breaking it down and seeing it for exactly what it is. Because when you don't deal with it, it actually seems like it grows bigger and bigger every day. And because you're constantly running, so your perception of it starts to change. What am I running away from? Eventually you'll feel like you're running away from a whole lion. That's when it really starts to mess with your head. So we have to remember to break this. First of all, who is feeling these things? Who are you talking to when you're asking, why is this coming up? Why are we going back to that place? I don't want to go back to it. Well, you have to go back to it because you have to deal with it. You have to help that fragment of you to heal. Just like you have to help your toe to heal, you have to help your stomach flu to heal. If you do not, sometimes people will say, if I don't think about it, it won't hurt. If I just wash it a bit and forget about it, clean the wound and forget about it, it will not hurt. But if it is deep enough that it needs attention, it will tell you that it needs attention. And for the physical body, we will fix that part. Same with the mind. That fragment needs to be healed so that that ulcer that you have does not become a cancer. And how does it become a cancer? When it starts to take over your entire being. You're constantly running from it. It has become so big. So when you start to ask these questions, you start to demystify this big problem. And then you ask yourself also, what are the lessons I have learned? This, and this. I've learned next time to be more careful, or I've learned next time to listen to my intuition. At that point, you'll even understand that the intuition is actually a powerful tool that we have inside of us that guides us, that helps us. You will never know until you actually, sit down with yourself in situations like that and say, I knew. And many times we'll say, I knew it, I felt it, I knew this person was going to do X, Y, Z to me. And then when it happens, we don't celebrate the fact that there was an inner knowing. we instead either are upset that they did it, or we get stuck in a place that does not serve us. So I just wanted to share and say, every time we are struggling with something, we are struggling because we are not dealing with it the way that we should. It's coming up so that we see it. And when we treat it with kindness, when we treat that fragment of us, when I treat that Jerry inside of me with kindness and love, I actually heal it. Because then I can say, Jerry, inner Jerry, I want you to understand that there's nothing happening. That thing, that bad thing is not happening to us right now. Let's first agree. And then it will say, okay, yes, I can see that it's not happening now. But every time I think, I think about it, it feels like it's happening now. Yes, let's go and understand why that is so. This happened, this is why it happened, this is how we break it down, this is how, and I forgive you. Basically, what I'm saying is, I forgive myself. And I'm reassuring that fragment of me that we are now good. We are now good, and this has been dealt with. It's now out of the way. When a situation like that comes up again, we will do our best to behave differently. And then that is how, so depending on what that traumatic experience is, it starts to become less and less severe in our minds, less and less, and we actually start to feel better that we're actually learning from it, and that the next time we're going to do better. And also learning that we have an internal compass that warns us, that tries to guide us and give us direction on how to behave in certain situations. So we start to listen to it more. And so even if something happens, you say, I felt like it was coming this time, I did not know what to do, but I knew it was going to come. So it's not like something that was a complete surprise. And when we continue doing that, we learn to not hold on to negative things for long times, or even when we go out to speak to somebody else, we allow ourselves to be vulnerable enough to really, really see, because we are not pretending that it's not that bad. When deep down inside, just put it all out there, and put all the pieces out on the table, and look through, move them around, and see what actually holds water, what is really fact. Because you'll find that the fact in and of itself is not so huge, and you can break it down and understand why things happened, and then say, we can now let it go. It's now really, really in the past. But if we don't put it all out, if we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable and put it all out, then we cannot heal it. And that inner us, that small fragment of us, will feel like the whole of us is not seeing them, is not appreciating their problem. Exactly the same way as we will say, my mom doesn't understand you're not really seeing me. My friends don't really see me. My husband, my wife does not really see me. They don't understand me. It's because, they're not seeing all the fragments. They're not seeing all the parts. Maybe you're not putting out all the parts, or you are, and they're just not seeing it. So that's the same way. If we don't allow our inner self to be open, so that we also allow ourselves to see everything. Remember that because it's happening to us, we're the ones who have to be vulnerable to ourselves, and we are also, so the bigger us is the one that sees the vulnerability of the smaller part. So we have to learn to trust who we are. Inner me brings the issues out, then the whole of me pays full attention to what the inner me is saying, what this smaller fragmented me is saying, so that I can help break it down, decipher it, and let it start to heal. So this is what I wanted to share, just for anyone who's going through any trauma, to say we can actually work through it on our own. You can even do this exercise while standing in front of the mirror, and understand that while you're talking back and forth to yourself, you're actually just speaking to a fragment of you that has been holding this trauma inside. So thank you so much. I hope this is helpful, and I hope that you can try it out and let me know in the comments what you feel, or even just about everything that I've said. It's just come into my mind and makes perfect sense. So thank you so much.